What's going on, Hokie Nation? Happy Wednesday. Welcome in to TSL today, brought to you by Triumph NIL. I'm Giovanni Heater, joined alongside Carter Hill, and we're here to give you a little bit of a preview on this Final Four matchup between the LSU Tigers and the Virginia Tech Hokies coming up on Friday evening. It's the early game, the 7 o'clock game down in Dallas. Carter, first and foremost, though, man, doesn't that have a ring to it? Regardless of what happens, a banner will be hung in Castle Coliseum. The Hokies are going to the Final Four for the first time in program history on both the men's and women's side. It's the first time this school has played in a Final Four in the sport of basketball.
Can you say that again one more time? Hokies are going to the Final Four.
There you go.
Which is crazy to think about. I mean, yeah, they were the 1 seed. They were technically supposed to be there. However, they weren't favored against Tennessee, Ohio State. A lot of people talked about a potential Tennessee-UConn Elite Eight matchup. Lo and behold, Virginia Tech, they're in the Final Four. And we talked about it. I was actually, ironically enough, listening to a football podcast, which I was in the fourth chair for a couple weeks ago. And we were previewing the Tech-Tennessee game in Knoxville on the women's side of things in December. And we were kind of joking about the possibility of a Final Four. Well, not only have they done that, they've won their first ever ACC championship. They were a 1 seed for the first time in program history. They've won 15 games in a row. You know how tough that is? 15 games in a row. And here they are going to the Final Four. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Virginia Tech has been an incredible story, one that people will absolutely never forget, led by so many talented players. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how great Virginia Tech is for so long, but I want to educate people what to expect out of the 3-seeded LSU Tigers on Friday evening. And first and foremost, something that stands out to me here, second in the SEC, obviously right behind South Carolina, 32-2 on the season. One of their losses came to South Carolina, and the other loss came to Tennessee. But when you look at this team, how are they only a 3 seed with a 32-2 record?
It's funny because, to be totally honest, I didn't know a ton about LSU until earlier this week. I watched them a little bit against Miami and Greenville. I was actually at the beach this weekend, and I was watching the game at a restaurant. So that was the little bit I had seen of LSU. When I was prepping for this little podcast on TSL Today, love the ring of that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do. 32-2 and 15-1 in the SEC. So I brought up the same question to you about 2 hours ago. Why in the world is LSU a 3 seed? They're in a power... Stop laughing over there. They're in a Power 5 conference. They're in the SEC. Why are they a 3 seed? Why are they a 3 seed? They're the number 11 overall seed. So I call up David Cunningham, who's waiting for a flight right now in Dulles, outside of DC. And I'm like, so why is LSU a 3 seed? You would think with those credentials, you mentioned it, their 2 losses throughout the season were to South Carolina. They started the year 18-0, were to South Carolina, and then in the SEC tournament semifinals to Tennessee. They only had 1 loss on their resume until the SEC tournament semifinals just 2 weeks ago. Yeah. That's insane to think about.
If they had won that game, they're probably at least a 2.
Probably so, but they're the number 11 overall seed, so they're not even... They're
true.
More fringe on a 4, which is what is so bizarre to me. So I call up David, and David's waiting for his flight, and he's like, what's up? And I'm like, why, and this is all credit to him, why is LSU a 3 seed? And he said, well, and I quote, did you look at their out-of-conference strength, the schedule? It's 320. Now, Virginia Tech is 130. So that's not great by any means, but Virginia Tech did beat a decent Nebraska team. They went on the road to Knoxville and beat Tennessee. But let's look at LSU's non-conference schedule. They're essentially, and I'm not calling out Buzz Williams, but they are essentially the Texas A&M of women's basketball. They don't play anybody. Bellarmine, Mississippi Valley State, Western Carolina, Houston Christian, Northwestern State, George Mason, UAB, Southeastern Louisiana, Tulane, New Orleans, Lamar, Montana State, shout out Zach Mackey, Oregon State.
A little tune-up with the Beavers.
Exactly, a little tune-up with the Beavers. So they didn't play anybody. That's why they're a 3 seed. David put it with me this way. Virginia Tech is essentially, and they are statistically, the second best team that LSU has faced this season. Behind South Carolina, of course. You could argue Tennessee's up there, but the Hokies, they took care of business on the floor. They beat them twice. So, I don't know. It's interesting. You got an interesting matchup, though, with LSU, though.
Were you surprised at how human they made Miami look? after how good Miami has played in this tournament up to this point.
That's the other thing too with the NCAA tournament.
I mean, you got to remember Miami went on the road and won at Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana. Yeah,
like,
both the men's and women's teams at Miami knocked out both the men's and women's teams at Indiana on back-to-back days.
Yes.
How bizarre is that? Miami was playing well. Everybody in the ACC and who had followed ACC women's basketball throughout the season knows how good the Hurricanes are. They beat Virginia Tech down in Coral Gables earlier this year.
Nobody could shoot in that game, though.
No doubt.
Not in Coral Gables. In this LSU Miami game, literally no one could shoot.
54-42. Did you hear what Kim Mulkey said at halftime?
Yes, I did.
She told Angel Gray, I believe,
Yeah.
who was doing the play-by-play here for the first and second rounds in Blacksburg. She said, if I was, and this is paraphrasing, of course, if I was just a neutral basketball fan watching this game, I'd turn the TV off.
Yeah.
That's how bad the offense was in the first half.
I couldn't believe I'm watching the fourth quarter. There's like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then I hear, I think it was Angel Gray calling play-by-play for the game. And she goes, and finally we have a three-pointer. And she goes, the first for either team to this point in the game. I'm like, there's 8 minutes left in the game and nobody's hit a three. And they both had double-digit misses from beyond the arc.
No, it's insane. It's insane. I think it really shows you what LSU looks like as a team, though. They're not great offensively. They are really good defensively. They are good defensively, so they could stifle Virginia Tech.
They're tall, too.
Yeah, they're tall, but I mean, are the Tigers going to be able to keep up with Virginia Tech? I think that's the biggest question in the game, and this is skipping ahead, but are they going to be able to keep up? I mean, Virginia Tech's looked lethal offensively recently.
I don't think they might have someone that can guard Kitley in a way inside. I don't think they have anybody that can guard Georgia Amor.
No, I agree. Yeah, you can counter that inside. Angel Reese, Will Stewart brought it up on the podcast earlier today, so go check that out. TechSideline.com, TechSideline on YouTube. Should be the next video. Angel Reese has 32 double-doubles this season.
Right.
Okay. Liz Kitley has either 55 or 56, I believe, off the top of my head, in her career at Virginia Tech, which is still outstanding. But think about how much we talk about Liz Kitley and her ability to record a double-double.
Yeah.
Angel Reese, LSU has played 34 games this season. She has recorded a double-double in 32 of them. She's averaging 23 points a game and 16 rebounds per contest. 16 rebounds. That is absurd. So the rebounding could be an issue for Virginia Tech, but you still got Kitley down low. And yeah, I don't know if they can match Georgia Amor up top. I'll tell you what, though, like, what's so cool about this matchup is, and we were talking about it on, I listened to your TSL Today episode on Monday with Nick and then David, who was zooming in from Seattle. This game is so full circle because when you're looking at it from a Virginia Tech personnel standpoint, I told the story this morning talking to just Will and you and Andy. But 2 years ago, Virginia Tech went to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2006. They ran into a buzzsaw in the Baylor Bears in the second round of the NCAA tournament. At the time, Kim Mulkey was the head coach there. They beat them. I don't have the score in front of me. I think it was like 90-48. I remember I was PA announcing for a volleyball game at Blacksburg High School, and I checked the score. I was like, nope, glad I didn't watch that one. Well, Kim Mulkey, and Kenny Brooks has been very public about this story, talking about it in press conferences and on podcasts and whatnot, talking to ESPN. He has said that Kim Mulkey, in the handshake line after that game, said, your girls are going to be pretty dang good. And yes, the Bears won the game by 42 points, but Georgia Amor, Liz Kitley, Kayla King, all a young nucleus. Asia Shepard was on that team, but that same nucleus that was young at the time has now led Virginia Tech to a Final Four against LSU and Kim Mulkey. That's kind of full circle.
You got to look at, too, that the ACC better than the SEC. SEC is very top heavy. South Carolina at the top, Tennessee at the top, LSU at the top. Then kind of a situation everywhere, everybody else. I mean, Ole Miss got into the tournament. Mississippi State got into the tournament. Ole Miss actually had a big win. But other than that, it's pretty top heavy. Not the case in the ACC. Everybody's good pretty much top to bottom. But you have a plethora of really, really good teams at the ACC that can beat anybody on any given night. One thing that does stick out that worries me, Carter, and you do have to remember the non-conference schedule and that the fact that the SEC is not as good, but right now LSU averaging 84 points per game, Virginia Tech only 72 points per game.
I will say, though, I mentioned it, that is very skewed with the non-conference schedule. They scored 125 points against Bellarmine, however you say that. They're in Louisville.
Right.
They scored 111 against Mississippi Valley State, 107 against Western Carolina, 101 against Houston Christian, and 100 against Northwestern State. Still dang impressive. They scored over 100 points in their first 5 games, but that is really going to skew that statistic. So I think you have to look at the strength of the competition and who they've been playing. The SEC is very top heavy. It's almost like the ACC in men's basketball, although the top is stronger with the SEC on the women's side. South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee, you mentioned it, or Ole Miss, I should say, got to the Sweet 16. Mississippi State won a game, and then Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas were teeter-tottering, and then Missouri, Florida, and Auburn, I believe, were in the WNIT. So, and poor Jake Lyman at Vanderbilt was 12-19. So, yeah, the SEC is just not as strong as the ACC. I think that stat's a little bit skewed with their non-conference schedule and who they played, but you got to be careful. I mean, they have 3 girls that score in double figures, so it'll be a tough test for Virginia Tech for sure. There's a reason why all 4 of these teams are in the Final Four.
How do you think Virginia Tech matches up on the defensive side? Kenny Brooks just said in his last press conference that the Hokies are underrated defensively, and it's not that they get out and put pressure on you necessarily. They don't have any kind of vaunted press or anything like that. He said they just take a lot of things away that the typical fan's eye would not see.
Well, I think it goes back to how connected Virginia Tech is. Yeah, I think their defense is extremely underrated. You look at that Virginia Tech-Ohio State game, that first half of basketball was just extremely high level. If you are a neutral fan watching that game between the Hokies and Buckeyes, that was wildly entertaining. The defense against Tennessee was fantastic. Against South Dakota State was phenomenal. Chattanooga, the Mocs put up only 33 points. So the Hokies overall have been really good defensively, and they slowed down Ohio State in the second half. They let the one girl, I forget her name, I apologize, go off in the first half. She just was hot from 3. I think she hit 5 threes in the first half, only 1 in the second half. So Virginia Tech is good defensively, and they're going to match up, I think, well against this LSU team. Now, South Carolina, Iowa could be a little bit different story. South Carolina, everybody knows how good the Gamecocks are. And then Iowa, Caitlin Clark, man. She's really good. It'll be a fun national championship game regardless of whoever plays in it. Obviously, we're going to hope for the best and hope the Hokies are in it. But Andy said it on the podcast today. You really don't have a good option for the national championship game. But I think they match up well against LSU.
Well, I told everybody this on the podcast, but I'll say it again. Jake Lyman had the opportunity to see Tennessee and LSU and South Carolina while calling games for Vanderbilt. And he just said that LSU's not really that great. And he said that Tennessee's better than LSU, and Virginia Tech got through Tennessee in pretty convincing fashion on top of that. And Tennessee did just beat LSU in the SEC tournament semifinal. So obviously it's different. Obviously it's a couple weeks later and matchups are different. But from somebody, a source of ours that part of the Tech Sideline family that saw it firsthand all season long, he believes that Tennessee is better than LSU and that Virginia Tech should have an okay time against the Tigers. But it's the Final Four. It's the NCAA tournament. You never know. I want to get a prediction, not for this game. We don't want to jinx anything. On the other side, though, you got South Carolina going to the championship, or you got Caitlin Clark soaring the Hawkeyes over the Gamecocks?
I got South Carolina. It's so tough to pick against the Gamecocks. Caitlin Clark is the real deal, don't get me wrong, but you can't beat a team like South Carolina with just one player. And that's of no disrespect to the rest of the Hawkeyes. They obviously have a good team, but South Carolina from top to bottom is ridiculously good. There's a reason why they're unbeaten. And that's all I'll say about that. I do think the Gamecocks get to the national championship game. So
I'm going to say Iowa upsets South Carolina. We get be pretty darn cool if Virginia Tech does end up making it a Georgia Amore, Caitlin Clark matchup.
Gosh.
That'd be ridiculous.
It'd be great for women's college basketball, too. I mean, the viewership for women's basketball in this NCAA tournament has been ridiculous. I think I saw the other day there were more viewers watching the Iowa game the other night. I guess it was Iowa-Louisville than there were for any single NBA game the entire season. There were more people watching that game than any NBA game on ESPN the entirety of the season, which is crazy. So I think it would be great for the sport if Iowa and Virginia Tech play in the national championship game. It's new blood, too. South Carolina's been there. Virginia Tech, it's their first Final Four. Iowa, it's their first Final Four since 1993 or 4. So I think that'd be great for the sport for sure.
No doubt. And I also saw another one. Cheapest ticket right now for the women's Final Four on Friday, because I think you get to go to both games.
Yeah, it's
if
a
you buy a
session
ticket.
thing,
Yeah. So Cheapest ticket right now is $385 in that ballpark.
Insane.
Cheapest ticket for the men's, $84. Granted, the men are playing in a 72,000 seat football stadium.
And they don't have the blue bloods.
And the women are playing in a and they don't have the blue bloods. And the women are playing in a 24,000 seat arena.
Yeah.
But that just still does speak some volumes to the growth, no doubt about it.
No doubt. I'm excited. That is the reason why I'm going down Saturday if the Hokies win, because of ticket prices.
There you go. There you go. All right, well, that'll do it here for our LSU preview. Hokies going to the Final Four. Thanks so much for being with us. Enjoy the game tomorrow. For Carter Hill, Kyle Marshak producing, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long. Enjoy the game from down in Dallas if you're going, or from watching at home. As always, go Hokies.